Hey guys, yeah, consider this kind of an update to the for the original video of where I talked about 2022 was the year that we discovered Tails was a ladies' man when it came to certain stories and such. Or it turned well, basically, yeah, that was the title of it. Just double checking, but. Yeah, I wanted to redo this because when you go back and listen to the audio, and although it's gotten over 200 plus views by the time I'm recording this, and probably more by the time you listen, and I do appreciate that. I wanted to redo it because, like I said, the audio seemed to be going out, out and in. It's like it would lower. And to the point that you could hear it, but just barely, and then you would sometimes not even hear it at all, like there'd be some grumbling or something like that. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to redo it. It's not the first time this has happened, and I've had to redo it, so that's what I want to do here. But yeah, getting back to, that original topic that I did in the original video, everybody looks at this year from a Lunar New Year perspective as the year of the rabbit. And I know that if you're a Sonic fan, various female rabbits are going to get a lot of attention. Bunny Rabbit, Vanilla the Rabbit, Cream the Rabbit, and many, many more. But if 2023 is looked at as the year of the rabbit, then for us fans of Sonic the Hedgehog, we could say, for me personally, we could say that 2022 was the year that we discovered that Tails is quite the ladies' man. It is. Now, we've known, through even official Sonic media, that Tails basically has a way of attracting the ladies. We know that. I mean, you look at Sonic Boom, you look at that one ending on that one episode where he's finally fixing Percy's bike, and then she says what she does. It's like, okay, what are you trying to say here, right? What are you trying to tease here? Then you bring in, Zoe later on in the series, who's basically his official girlfriend, I could say, at least for Boom. You tease, obviously, I think in the series and even in the comics that he might have an attraction to Styx, maybe. And then you look at things like Sonic X, and, in Sonic X you have Cosmo, of course. You have Cosmo there. And, pretty much the rest is history. And then, of course, you have fan pairings based on, things they might notice in the comics, the games, and even the shows. I mean, fan pairings like Tails and Amy Rose, Tails and Nicole, and so on. But when it comes to the fans, that's where Tails as a ladies' man really exceeds. There is no getting around that. He really does exceed in that department, especially in the very adult department when it comes to stories. And when I'm talking adult, I'm talking triple XXX NFSW erotic, let's get it on kind of department. Now, the way they make this work out sometimes is, when they tell the story, they have it seem like Tails is a little reluctant at first, but then after getting some convincing from, the girl that wants to, get it on with him, and then kind of mentally convincing himself that, okay, this may not be a bad thing, that's when the fun pretty much begins. The other catch, too, is sometimes in these stories, Tails is actually older than what he is in the comics or any of these shows or even the games. He's basically of age. So that's one big way around it. But when it comes to stories too, and I've talked about these numerous times in reviews and stuff, they're quite interesting. They really are. They are really, quite interesting at the end of the day. They really are. Some stories, for example, that I have talked about, go along the lines of something like Southern Foxy Lovin', and that's Lovin' with Lovin'. I guess you could say comma or apostrophe, whatever you want to call it, right there. But yeah, it's called Southern Foxy Lovin', and as I've talked about in a review of the story, basically it centers around the fact that Bunny is, of course, married to Antoine, just like she is in the comics, Archie comics, that is. But unfortunately for her, Antoine, doesn't want to satisfy her urges. He doesn't want to, put out when she gets in a mood. And Bunny basically is getting frustrated by this. And I guess Antoine's getting frustrated with her trying to, get the moment to happen. So she decides basically to, go to maybe the only other canine in Knothole or Pneumo Metropolis that she knows would probably be able to satisfy those urges for her. And what's interesting is it's not hidden in the story. It's not like, hinted at or anything. It's, thought-wise, it comes straight out that, that Bunny has always had, an attraction to Tails, especially as he got older. Because, yes, in this story, he is of age. So what happens, long story short, because I talked about this in a review, Tails sees her on the bench thinking, because he notices something's on her mind, invites her over to his place for tea, just to, talk things over, maybe, a little luncheon, a little snack, get together, friendly thing. However, what he doesn't anticipate, and what Bunny notices when she's invited over and she takes the invitation, after she's over there, she kind of, I guess you could say takes the initiative of being like, you know what? I'm in his place. It's just me and him. No one's around. Why not, take advantage of the opportunity and get these urges that she has taken care of? And that's exactly what she does. Because as soon as Tails comes back with, the tea and everything, she starts to, suddenly, much to his surprise, come on to him. And she does this very teasingly where she's showing off parts of her body and everything, like letting her clothes slip down a little bit. And even Tails takes notice and he's wondering, why are you showing me parts of your body? What's going on here? And then that's when Bunny just, I guess you say goes for it because she's like, oh, so you noticed. And again, that's when she starts to go for it. And what she does is she kisses him on the neck, which kind of surprises him. And then I think, Tails, I got to go back and read it. But basically, Tails is a little reluctant at first. He's like, whoa, what are you doing here? And, that's when she kind of explains once again, because she does explain before this, she does explain after they get to his place what the problem is and everything. And even though he feels a little embarrassed, a little blushy, if you will, he's old enough to understand the situation. And then afterwards, he decides to go get some tea. And then, like I said, that's when Bunny decides while he's gone to make her move. So once again, as she's making her move, she lets him know that, hey, you're the only one I can trust to get these urges out. And even though Tails is still a little reluctant, as I've mentioned in the review, she basically says, do not worry. Consider this the one-time deal, because afterwards, this won't happen again. And mostly Antoine won't find out. Basically, she's saying, look, yeah, I'm about to do something that I shouldn't with you, and that's cheat on my husband. But if we do it just this one time and don't make it, a habit, then he won't become suspicious of something. In other words, he won't find out. And Tails, again, is a little conflicted, but then Bunny decides, okay, how about this to convince you? And she kisses him on the lips. And as she kisses him on the lips, she lets herself melt onto his body. Now, as I've mentioned before, the melting isn't, she turns all liquidy and gooey and gunks all over his body. No. Or spreads all over his body. No. She basically leans herself so completely into him, if you will, as she's kissing him, that it feels like her body's melting into his, if you will. And Tails, mentally thinks to himself, you know what, if I go through with this, there's no turning back. But then he realizes, I've always found Bunny, like all the other guys, to be too hot to say no. So he says, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And if she says, if she says Antoine's not going to find out, I believe her. So Tails finally gets into it. Bunny notices it. And Tails agrees, okay, but it's only for this one time. And Bunny's like, I'm going to make sure I can. Basically, Bunny says something along the lines of, oh, I'm going to make sure you eat those words, and they proceed to get it on. They take the various steps of getting it on and everything. And what's interesting about the story, I don't think I talked about this in the review, but what's interesting about it is the Cyber Fox, who is the author behind the story, he basically describes their interaction with each other various times, whether, to the point where he says, and this is noticeable in the story, like I said, numerous times. He talks about them gazing into each other's eyes, or looking deeply into each other's eyes, before they do something. And to me, what that sounds like is he originally wanted to go a different direction. Like he was going to do Bunny and Tails, but he wanted to do it a little different, to where this interaction, this intimacy, this, getting it on with each other was going to lead to something more, basically lead to them falling in love with each other. But I think because of the fact that, maybe that would have been too complicated and everything, and maybe he couldn't decide, okay, how is Bunny going to, be apart from Antoine and end up with Tails? Like, I think he just went with a more simpler route than a complicated route, and that's why we got, the story that we did. But yeah, the way he describes it at times is, basically the falling in love with each other, just by gazing into each other's eyes, staring deeply into each other's eyes. When they're kissing, they're letting the tongues do the tango so much and everything. They don't want to let go and all that. It's like basically, again, it feels like he wanted to go in a different direction, but he didn't. But yeah, but Southern Fox 11 is, definitely worth checking out if you want to, because it's one of those examples of a story to where most of it is, them getting it on and going through the motions, but it has, some reasoning, some purpose behind that happening, some story behind it, and it even has Tails being a little reluctant, at first to want to do this, because he doesn't want to cheat on his friend, until Bunny's like, hey, don't worry, he's not going to find out and everything. He's not going to find out because it's a one-time deal. But that's not the only story either that involves Tails. There's another one too. That's really interesting in its concept. So the other story that I was alluding to is called Tails' Harem Tale. That's right, Tails' Harem Tale, also written by Cyber Fox, or the Cyber Fox. And in it, basically, we have the concept of, well, obviously it takes place in the future. But what's interesting about it is, one, according to the description, it is a non-canon, basically alternate universe kind of deal. But what's interesting about this is Tails is married to Fiona. Yeah, the same Fiona that betrayed the Freedom Fighters and Tails had a crush on. Yeah, because this is a non-canon alternate universe story where peace is pretty much the daily routine. Everything is good now. Basically, Fiona in this universe is married to Tails. But basically what happens is that Tails finds out that Fiona and many other girls, wives, girlfriends, fiancés, have an agreement to live as friends with benefits. Now, you might say to yourself, friends with benefits? Yeah. Let me explain what that is, okay? Let me explain what that is, to the best of my knowledge. Basically, if you've watched the movie of the same name, Friends with Benefits, it's basically, it's basically a concept to where you're not in love with each other, but, neither one of you, has a significant other just yet. So you're not in love with each other, but you also have urges. So by having these urges, you decide, okay, we'll do the thing, we'll do the deed, we'll make, we'll make love, we'll have, intimacy, and everything, we'll have, NFSW fun and all that, and that's it. Nothing more. Then you just go your separate ways. That's basically the concept here, because basically the concept in Tails' Harem Tale is Tails is the next in line of the various husbands and boyfriends that get subjected to what's known as the treatment. And what the treatment is basically is all the wives and girlfriends of these husbands and boyfriends make out with a certain individual. Like I say, they make out with a certain, individual. Like if it's Sonic's turn, then all the girls, including Fiona, even Sonic's wife or girlfriend in this, I think it's Amy. Is it Amy or is it Sally? It's one of them. I have to look again, but basically, even someone like Sonic, ends up, getting the treatment to where he ends up basically getting it on, if you will, with someone like Fiona or someone like Amy or someone like, I think Amy is his girlfriend because I think they have Sally dating Nicole in this. So yeah, basically it's like, Sonic of course will get it on with his girlfriend in this alternate universe story, Amy, or if you're a Sonic Sally fan, you want to reverse the roles, Sally, whatever. But then he'll go about and meet up with these other girls, these other wives and girlfriends of his friends, and he'll get it on with them. He'll get it on with, like I said, in this story, Sally's with Nicole, so he'll get it on. So after doing it with his girl, Amy, again, non-canon, alternate universe, he will go on and meet up with Sally and get it on with Sally. And then after Sally, he'll meet up with maybe Nicole and get it on with Nicole. And if they want to add Alicia in there, Sally's mom, he'll get it on with Alicia, and so on. And that's basically where Tails is at. Tails starts off with Fiona, of course, and then proceeds to go from there, from the likes of Amy to Blaze to, I'm assuming Sally, Bunny, Nicole, Tangle and Whisper, Percy and Stacy, if you will, the Bandicoot twins from Boom, and so on. Yeah, it's one of those non-canon alternate universe stories where it's a universe where all the continuities of Sonic, exist. All the characters within every Sonic, media exist together. But yeah, basically it's just so on and so forth, that he ends up basically, having, intimacy, NFSW moments with these characters, sometimes more than once. And even Fiona in the story tells him, yeah, that's going to happen. These girls are going to probably want to do you more than once. So, there's that story. There's a story of, I think it's called, it has a similar tone. It's got a similar tone. It's called Tales and the Wives of Mobius. Well, basically you have certain characters, there are certain characters that are wives of other characters. Like I think Sally is the wife of Sonic and so on, and I think who else? Who else is there? Vanilla and so on. Anyway, they're basically unsatisfied, so they decide to satisfy those urges by getting it on with Tails. And they set up different times, planning with and against each other to make that happen. So there's a similar situation there. There's another one called Miles and the MILFs. That's MILFs, MILFs, where basically it starts out with Tails agreeing to help Jules out. Jules Hedgehog, who is Sonic's dad in the Archie books, to help him out with Bernadette Hedgehog, who is Sonic's mom in the Archie books, and to help her out by satisfying her urges, because in this story, in this story, you can also look at it as an alternate universe that's identical to the Prime universe. Basically, Jules is still roboticized, but Bernadette isn't, and Bernadette is having these urges. So he convinces Tails, because Tails is always willing to help, never one to say no, especially to those in need, especially if it's a need that maybe surprises him, and everything. So basically, he convinces him to help his wife out. He says, "Okay, I'll do it." A little reluctant still, but yeah, basically, it's a story where he ends up, getting it on with Bernadette, and she even tells him, "Hey, before she kisses him officially, really on the lips, she even tells him, hey, don't call me Mrs. Hedgehog, call me Bernadette. Basically, like, now that they're going to get it on with each other, it's more along the lines to just act like, hey, we're lovers now, we're boyfriend, girlfriend, even though they're not. And again, they get it on and everything the first time. Then that's followed up by Vanilla, but Vanilla's interaction is because Cream basically overheard what's going on and even notices her mom's going through something similar like Bernadette and says, Tails help Bernadette, Tails can help my mom. Tails ends up doing it, but the difference is that even though Vanilla tells him, hey, just let me know when you're ready to, pull away or pull off, if you know what I mean, so that, the, what's the word I'm looking for? The most predictable situation won't happen. But when Tails goes to do that, Vanilla then admits, yeah, about that. I kind of lied, and that the moment, the heat that I'm in, because that's basically what that's basically what most of these girls are in. She basically tells him it's the kind of moment heat that that basically has her wanting to have that moment happen, to have that predictability happen to her. And yeah, long story short, Tails basically gets her potentially pregnant, thus potentially making Cream a big sister. But it doesn't end with Vanilla. The next one up is Alicia Acorn, and it's through Jules meeting up with the King, and the King kind of forcibly, but not so forcibly, convincing Tails to do it. And what's interesting about this interaction is it's Alicia that's a little reluctant, and Tails that has to take the initiative. And then they get it on. And what's interesting about all three moments is Tails basically agrees to come back and do it multiple times afterwards. I mean, here's the thing. He's done it twice already with Bernadette as of the past 2 chapters, and it looks like we were going to get set up for another moment between them, because she teases the fact that she's kind of all deserted up, if you will. She calls him up for another session, and she basically tells him that she's all deserted up, if you will, with certain cream and all that, and Tails has to say, yeah, unfortunately I gotta call it off and everything. So yeah, the cream that certain desserty cream went to waste. But yeah, long story short, you have stories like that. You have stories like A Mother in Need, where in this alternate universe story, this fan-made story, Tails is of age and he's dating Sally. His mother, not his mother, but Sally's mom is going through her moment, and Sally convinces her mom that, hey, you know what? If Dad's not going to help you, I know someone that can. Enter Tails. Tails a little reluctant at first, so is Alicia, but then after some coaxing, coaxing, convincing by Sally, they decide to have a threesome. And that's what they do. And there's even a moment where Tails gets a little surprised after he kind of, I guess you could say, unleashes his momentum on the upper region of both Alicia and Sally. That where Alicia, as he's kind of relaxing a little bit, watching them kind of clean themselves facially, if you will, that what happens is they end up kissing each other. And it kind of surprises Tails, and then after that they just decide to get it on even more so. They decide to have more fun, take turns, having Tails give them their moment and everything. And then it's alluded to afterwards that, they, continue this up into the next day. Like, because the story is Max is out of town for about a month, out of the kingdom for a month. So Alicia basically, after finally getting convinced and doing the thing, decides, I'm going to take advantage of this, and so on, and just, the so on and so forth, and the rest is history. And, yeah, those are just some of the stories. I mean, there's even a story where Tails is helped out by Sally, and, what happens is, they both, Sally, it's kind of very Looney Tune-wise, because it's the same thing, it's a similar story like with Rouge and everything, but what happens is, Tails at the end of this ends up, impregnating Sally. Hold on for a second. So like that. But there's another story too that basically has Tails, getting help from Sally, to satisfy his urges, and what happens in the end is he ends up impregnating Sally. So, and they end up becoming a couple of stuff, because even Sally tells him in the story, hey, whenever you need to get these urges, whenever you need to get these urges satisfied or taken care of, just come to me. And how it's noticed that he gets, Sally pregnant, potentially, is Nicole, gets alerted by, I guess, unexpectedly by Sally, and Nicole notices, her and, notices, just by some of the evidence that Tails and Sally did the thing. And then she notices some noises coming from the bathroom and looks in and sees them both in the shower doing the thing. But also notices there's more than just their two life signs. And closer inspection makes us notice potentially 3 new life signs within Sally, which basically gives off the impression that, oh crap, he may have impregnated her, But yeah, these are just examples that I've discovered last year, and I'm sure others have discovered last year. And those working on it, if some of these are series, have continued to help people discover through the additional chapters and everything, that besides what you see in the shows and stuff and everything, or even the comics or the games, to the fans, depending on how they view him, how they present him, Tails is indeed quite the ladies' man. Now, I highly recommend that you do check these out. They are worth the read. They are worth a laugh if you want to have a good laugh. They do have a good story to go along with them, explanation part, if you will, exposition, if you will, to help, make what you're about to read and maybe see in your mind more convincing and sensible. Basically, it's 2022. Even though 2023 is looked at as the lunar year for the year of the rabbit, 2022 for fans like me was the year that we discovered that Tails, Miles Prower, is quite the ladies' man. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video, and I will talk to y'all later. And you will get an audio podcast version of this later.